Welcome to our podcast, Resilient Heroes, where we are dedicated to showcasing the incredible journeys and contributions of women in the field of emergency management. I'm your host, Laura James. Welcome to the Resilient Heroes podcast, where we shine a spotlight on the women making extraordinary impacts in their communities. Today's guest is no exception. Sharon Bak is a powerhouse in emergency management and social services with over 25 years of experience on the front lines. From remote northern communities to large-scale evacuations, Sharon has dedicated her life to helping others through crisis, trauma, and recovery. She's a dedicated responder, a gifted trainer, and a true community builder, recognized nationally with awards like the Order of the Red Cross and the Governor General's Sovereign's Medal. A fierce advocate for mental health, Sharon brings wisdom, heart, and lived experience to every room she steps into. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you so much, Laura. Happy to be here.
So, you are known as one of the pioneering women in emergency management, as much as you may not love that title. You have been around for a very long time, and you have seen really everything. And you have dedicated your career to Northern Ontario in many ways. So I'm going to start by asking you, what inspired you to pursue a career in emergency management?
Well, a lot of it was a kind of in the blood, if you so to speak. My family comes from a long background of military, fire, police, and I joined my local volunteer fire department when I was, as soon as I could. I wanted to be on that team as soon as I hit the age, and I was 19. And that started my emergency career. And I just fell in love with helping people. I was also training at the same time to be a social service worker. And so I wanted to look at helping people in all kinds of ways. So it became a mix of this emergency life, this social service life with mental health. And just, I really feel that we don't do a great job in our society of looking after those who are the most vulnerable. And so that has become my passion and my purpose. And I like to always say that I have been in a place of vulnerability many times in my life with my own mental health journey. So I have some empathy and understanding for what it's like to not be able to day-to-day function, let alone when something really catastrophic happens in our worlds, which is happening more and more often. So yeah, I very much came to it, quite honestly, through my family line and seeing what my family members had dealt with, both positive and negative, but just the passion they had for being there for other people. And it really stuck with me. And I come from a long line of just folks who did community service, municipal politicians, things like that. And so service is just really in the blood for our family. It's a back trait, I will say.
And that is similar to many of our resilient heroes, is they felt a pull to be part of the community in a way that was both rewarding and they could see their impact. So let's go back a little bit and talk to me about, you said you got involved when you were in school for social work. So tell me how you began to think about marrying the two together.
So really what did it for me was when I became a volunteer with the Canadian Red Cross. It was called disaster services at that time, morphed into disaster management. But it really had that humanitarian component where it was, yes, about basic needs that need to be met for folks, but also looking at the comfort and care and the psychosocial that was so much a part of just making people feel comfortable and safe after something happens to them. So I really, really loved my journey through the Canadian Red Cross. I'm still a volunteer today in different forms. And that really solidified for me that there could be a mesh, if you will, between the two, and that we really need to put people first in all of the equations. And I wasn't seeing that in the start of my journey. I wasn't seeing that people were first. I saw processes come first. I saw egos come first. I saw silos come first. I saw money come first. And it never was lost on me that, I think they're doing it wrong. But I was so young, I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe I'm the one who doesn't get it. And then, over time, I'm like, no, there's something wrong. But I needed to hit a place of confidence in myself where I could actually raise my voice and say, no, this stuff isn't right. How about this other way we could look at it? And it wasn't necessarily that there were bad people or anything. There's a lot of wonderful people. It's the systems and structures have never been set up in the right way from the very beginning to put that people first component. And so Red Cross, I credit a lot with my journey in making sure that people are at the center of everything that I do.
And so in that respect, you have hit on something that for all of us resilient heroes and women in emergency management is something that helps us raise our voices because we often see the community first. And I like to say, we used to put up the priorities for an EOC in terms of management of your emergency in an order of, importance, life safety, first responders, et cetera, et cetera. But nowhere on that list do we see mental health or, the needs of the community in a specific way that you have been trying to address throughout your career in order to have that rise to the top in those discussions about what are the priorities. Because moving people and feeding people and housing people, that is definitely a priority. But understanding the impacts of what is happening for those people in the moment is extremely important. So, from the Red Cross, how did you move into, you have years of experience working in the provincial response arena as well. So how did you see a niche for yourself in that area?
So it was kind of interesting. I had gotten to a point in my employment in social services where I was quite frankly burnt out and I was losing my empathy, if you will. I was listening to some pretty traumatic stories and I was numb to them. And so all of a sudden, this job of a field officer at Emergency Management Ontario came up. And I thought, well, let's switch careers. People do it all the time. So I have
They
stayed
do.
right? I have stayed volunteering in social services, but it was, my choices as opposed to what I was having to do for employment. And so I took the leap. I absolutely loved it. The field officer role, I personally think is the best role at EMO. It gives you the opportunity to not only work with, the people that are very passionate in the Ontario Public Service, but your communities and people in general and building those relationships. And I had a really solid number of relationships already from my time with the Red Cross because I ran most of the responses for Northwestern Ontario and particularly in Thunder Bay. So it wasn't a hard leap. It was a good leap. It needed to happen. And by doing that, I was able to reinvigorate my empathy, if you will, but in a different way. And taking it into Emergency Management Ontario, where I very quickly saw that there was very little about mental health, both for, individuals that are affected, but for the staff involved, field staff, people at the Provincial Operations Center, just, general wise. So it reinvigorated me making that career change. And I never regretted it. It was probably the best job of my life in terms of being able to do some really cool things. And I got to build the very first peer support team that EMO had ever had. I did it strategically. I, got management on board. I did focus group meetings and sort of built up a mental health working group around it. And so that was really kind of being able to blend my social work life into emergency management at the start. And I focused kind of on the staff because if our staff's not okay, then how are we able to really support our communities and the people that are, in dire need of services and support. So it was a wonderful journey through that. It took a long time, but it was wonderful to see that there were some real good champions within the organization that wanted to see this happen, but, didn't necessarily have the clinical background that I had to be able to give that oversight from a clinical perspective. So it was, it reinvigorated everything for me.
Which is so important because in this career, we can get burnt out and unaware very quickly. Yes. And I want to stop and talk about this because really your project was a pilot project. There really hasn't been anything of its kind, specifically geared towards folks in emergency management. At least for us in our career, you really are leading the charge in that area. So I want to say from all of us, thank you for starting those conversations, for beginning to put programs in play that we can bring to the table for our leadership to understand. We support our police, fire, EMS, our folks within the yellow
Absolutely.
tape. And that has in the last decade really come to the forefront as something that we need to focus on. And you're really the first voice saying, hey, what about everybody else inside and outside the yellow tape who are supporting? And I can tell you in the years that I have been trained and have been a trainer, other than the personal gut check, are you okay to go into the EOC today? Are you okay to go to the reception center today? And most of us do that check, as we're brushing our teeth and lacing up our boots and going, we're showing up regardless of what our gut check says, right? And so really, even in my, our one-on-ones, as you and I have gotten to know each other, you often say things to me, including this morning, where I say, oh yeah, okay, I should be doing that. You're exactly right. So I want to talk about this journey that you have sort of pushed yourself in, reinvigorating, the things that are important to you, but also how you're doing this in the community. So a couple of things I want to chat about is, have you come up against barriers when trying to have these conversations as it relates to people in the field of EM? Like, what type of barriers have you come across? And what type of language do you use to sort of massage those barriers?
Oh, absolutely. There have been barriers. I think one of them that was quite disappointing and, continues to be in a larger societal perspective is management who are just ticking the boxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yep.
Look we have this person we can trot out who lives with mental illness and is open about it and is doing, this work, and we can trot them out and check the boxes and say we're engaging in mental health. And I felt that many times. I knew when it was a genuine engagement and when it was they were trotting me out, and it started to feel really gross after a while. So I had won an award from SIPCERT, which they had put out Champions of Mental Health Awards, and my team at EMO had nominated me, which was really wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I got it, and it was the first year, and I was the only EM person in Canada who got that award from them. And so it was a great recognition of the role of, championing emergency management. But I was very disappointed at one point when someone in a higher up sent me a congratulations, but also added, how can we use this to promote Emergency Management Ontario? And I thought, I'm not here to promote you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to promote mental health. And so it was those kind of things that I don't think people realized the impact negatively that had on, trying to make change, when you're like, oh, I'm not really making change. I'm just stamping the boxes here.
Exactly. Like, we want to make change to affect change and make people's lives better, infusing these conversations in our regular business, not make a change so that we can tick in a box and make a video about how amazing we are, right?
Exactly. And then the other one that I often come up against, both with first responders and other public safety personnel, is, well, this is what we signed on for. This is what you signed on for. Absolutely, I agree with that. We signed on for these roles. However, there is a huge gap in training and education when people sign on or when they're getting educated to go into these roles of what they might see. And it's not about scaring them away. It's about giving them the reality and helping them build the toolkit mentally that they can use going in. Because I have seen amazingly awful moral injury from people just sitting in the PIOC who are not around people, who are not responding to the community. Mm-hmm. But are hearing stories and seeing things, and then the high stress environment that's there. And it really felt like there was no recognition of it. What I'm super excited about is, the new Warrior Health Initiative, as an example, is noting public safety personnel in general. And they've listed specifically field officers and PIOC staff and emergency managers. I thought that was phenomenal to see. And that is the push that myself and many others have been making to say, you know what? It's not just first responders. They are amazing. I love them. I come from a family of them. I've been one. Well, we have to include all public safety personnel, because even though we're not first responders, we are dealing with some of the same traumatic and secondary trauma that comes with some of those stories and some of those dealing with people, and people who are maybe already in trauma themselves. So it was, so it's, yes, we've signed on for it, but we have done a terrible job at giving people the tools and the resources and the support they need. And I have seen really good people at all levels of government, private, public, who have had to leave the position simply because the supports weren't there, and the understanding of that stress and what it does to you is not there. So we're chipping away at it. I think we still have a long way to go. I get incredibly joyous some days and incredibly frustrated other days.
I have those same emotions too when it comes to our field. So yes. I just want to add to that to say that it feels like forward momentum is happening, but then as we do, we then look strategically and think, but what else and who else? And I think to myself, that's amazing. So we're going to recognize the folks inside the yellow tape, outside the yellow tape, reception centers, our staff in the EOC. But then I think we also need to think about, our water, wastewater staff, our transportation staff, all the people who might be deployed to the field and, inadvertently part of this emergency, because we have tasked them with delivering things to the scene. And we haven't trained those particular work staff in many municipalities to come across what they will see. And that, that for me is an additional next step we need to take beyond, because, my community was hit hard by the ice storm a few weeks ago, and I'm seeing municipal workers pulled in to do things that they never thought they would be doing, and helping out in ways that they never, they didn't sign up for that. So, yes. The recognition of the impacts of, supporting our communities through emergencies and through recovery, we need to start recognizing that that's all of our teams, not just the teams that we traditionally define. And, I am over the moon to hear that field officers, EOC staff, et cetera, are starting to be considered. Now, talk to me a little bit about, and this is my favorite question to ask our resilient heroes, and I know you're going to anticipate it, but as you've gone through this journey, because it really is a passion project for you, it is something that you're super passionate about, your family and community are passionate in supporting you, but have you faced, bias in the field? Because you're actually melding two things that we have a lot of pushback in today's society. One is gender bias, and then one is mental health awareness. And you're kind of pushing forward both of those things in your role. So talk to me about, the biases that you have felt. How do you navigate those? And, what advice would you give to other women who are facing similar challenges? Because, and add an additional sort of thing to that question to say, many of our listeners who are listening to today are probably going, yes, I feel that way. Yes, that's exactly what's happened. I've never had that training. I don't know how to even bring that into my organization and have those conversations. And of course, they're going to be up against potentially an additional barrier that is they are female bringing forward this potential program or initiative. And so I feel like that's a double sort of whammy to bring forward and have these conversations. And I know that you have pushed through these barriers, and being in Northern Ontario is an additional one. So you really, yes. When I say pioneer, you have really pushed through the barriers related to so many things. So talk to me about, how that feels and how do you push through some of that when, you're facing challenges, whether you're feeling that's, location-based, gender-based, or because you're bringing forward something that hasn't really gotten fulsome recognition because you're a champion of mental health.
Wow, so I could spend so much time on this. So
all day we could be together.
I know. The first thing I'm going to say, quite honestly, Laura, is it starts with me. It starts with you. It starts with us individually. And one thing that is super important is we need to be in our own mentally well spaces. We need to recognize when we're not. We need to build our own toolkits so that we're in a place where we are coming from, if we do have to hit those barriers and have to have those fights, that we are doing it in the most appropriate way. not breaking down into, something that is going to just get, oh, she's just a whiny female. You know what I mean? Because that comes up all the time. So I start with me. And I think that's super important. Self-awareness is very uncomfortable for people. And we don't necessarily like it, but we are not perfect beings. And
far from it.
As much as we'd like to, and I've met people who think they are, we are not perfect beings. So for me, yes, I have a mental illness, several diagnoses, but, I've had trauma in my life. But even if I hadn't, I still have to know how I am involved in the equation, right? And maybe if there is a negative, am I contributing? I might be, I might not be. And what can I do to it? So I always say, start with you, because I really don't think it's helpful to consistently be looking out and saying it's the victim mentality, right? Sometimes we are victims. Absolutely. I have been a victim of abuse. I have been a victim of, many things, but it's not taking on that mentality, right? So I think that's super important to remember. And it's very hard because it's when we're not feeling mentally well, we can, drown in ourselves. And it's not to say there's something wrong with us. It's about what happened to you, right? And shifting that narrative. And I see it all the time. Oh my God, there's something wrong with that person. No, I asked the question, what happened to that person? Let's have a conversation. Let's build that support in. So again, it's starting with the individual. Now, from a perspective of barriers, absolutely. I'm a female. I have a mental illness. I have struggled with my weight. I have psoriasis, which is unsightly. I am in a male-dominated, field with male-dominated systems. I'm in Northern Ontario. Everyone thinks we're Hicks. We're not. We're probably some of the most creative people you've ever met because we know how to do something with almost nothing. And we have a huge volunteer community commitment, that kind of thing. So I have broken those barriers as much as I can, a number of ways. I mean, sometimes I have to raise my voice. Sometimes I have to repeat myself. Sometimes I have to walk in a room and go, what am I going to be today? Depending on the culture of the room. Sometimes I have to pull out the social work side and be soft because that's the nature of the room. Sometimes I have to pull out the hard part and be very clear, but always respectful, always listening, always watching. But I also find that it's very important for women, especially, to stop apologizing.
100%.
We apologize for everything, right? Somebody falls down in front of me. I had nothing to do with it. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?
I'm so sorry. Yes.
Right? No, I don't have to apologize for raising my voice. I don't have to apologize for saying that there's a problem here. And I have had several experiences where I have been, and I'm sure you've had them too, Laura. You're sitting at a table and you're the only female there and you give an idea and it's dismissed, but the guy 10 minutes later next to you says it and everybody thinks it's a wonderful idea. And I always hesitated to say, hey, wait, that was mine, because I didn't want to sound whiny, right? We just kind of like, okay, now I'm in a place where it's like, no, I actually said that 10 minutes ago. Thank you very much. And, and if they want to think I'm catty, it's fine. It's my voice and it's my ability to walk away from that room knowing I gave it my all and I said what I felt needed to be said. And not to disparage anyone else. If I can't control their reactions, and that's a big part that people need to understand. I have had, bringing up, at one point in my life, a group of us brought up some gender issues, and we had a really, really negative reaction from a number of people and, males. And I think a lot of it had to do more with them being sort of triggered by that uncomfortable space. And maybe chose not to lean into that, which I always say, lean into the discomfort. Amen. That's how we learn. Exactly. But I get it. It's not an easy space. And so even in those moments, I had empathy for where that other person was coming from, but not at the expense of my own wellness. And that's what we often don't do. We walk into these rooms and we let it go, but it's at the expense of our wellness. If I let it go now, it's because I choose to, not because I'm feeling forced to. And so those are, right?
That's a very important distinction, Sharon, that I actually hadn't really put a finger on for myself even. So let's say that again.
So when I leave a room and if I have made a choice to not speak up or not say something, I make sure it's because I have made that choice because it was the best choice for me, not because I felt forced to by the people in the room or the energy in the room.
That is one of the most amazing pieces of advice I've heard in a long time. And I would actually go a little bit further to say, I don't think there will be a listener, hearing you say that and say, wow, I think that we have been, sort of raised to, and it starts in childhood. Children
Yeah.
are seen and not heard. So, I
Yes.
mean, oftentimes we take the decisions made before us, and whether we like them or not are, fairly quiet in going along to get along. And I think you're the first person to ever sort of say, if you leave a room and you're uncomfortable with that you didn't say something, that was the wrong decision to make. And it's like, wow, that is life-changing thing to think about.
Well, happy to share it because I think we need to listen to our bodies more, right? Our bodies will tell us whether what we've done is something we're comfortable with. I don't care if the other person's uncomfortable, quite frankly, at this point in my life. If I feel it's important to say, and my gut and my head and my heart are saying, you need to say this, then that's exactly what I need. Because guess what we do? If we don't do that, they build up, and that's where we have health issues, heart attacks, mental health concerns, right? We pile it on ourselves. So I guess probably maybe some age is in there too. And I'm a Gen X woman. And I'm just like, I'm at the point where I have to walk away feeling comfortable. I have to put my head on the pillow at night knowing that I can sleep well, that I did what I could. And I stuck to what's true to me.
It is very timely that we're having this discussion because, as you know, last week I was in New Orleans at the National Hurricane Conference, and for the first time at a national conference in emergency management, they had a stream or a track just dedicated to women in the field of emergency management for the very first time.
Wonderful.
20 years post Katrina, the anniversary of Katrina, and I had an opportunity to sit in rooms that were filled with, women having discussions that they've never been able to have in these forums.
Yeah.
What does it feel like? How do you deal with these challenges or gender bias, or how do you have these conversations? And honestly, it didn't matter if the women were from the States or Canada or, the Caribbean islands. All of us just, in a few short minutes are able to bond at circular tables that we've never had the opportunity to sit at, because those conversations there was never space for those, and sort of like your program and what you've been doing, it's like allowing women to have the conversations in EM that we haven't ever been able to have about what it feels like, how we manage through those long duration responses, how we recover, and glean from each other. Like you just shared with us, are you comfortable with leaving this conversation? Should you have said your piece? And we can all say, well, it comes with age and experience. But I also think it really comes with being supported by other women allies in the field to mean what you say what you mean, and have a place to be comfortable to have those conversations, which, is fairly new for all of us.
Yes. And I would add to that, it's also the male champions out there that are standing 100%. Beside us, right?
Yes.
Giving us the space, and not making it like it's what's the word?
Us versus them.
Yeah. And not like it's like some kind of gesture they're trying to be on. Like, no, they agree we hold equal space. And there's a lot of wonderful allies out there.
Thank you for bringing that up. And there were men in those sessions.
Yes.
And in almost every session at the end, and we ran out of time in every single session because, once the voices start being heard and, somebody says that happened to me, or I had this program and it was successful because, and we start sharing every single session. I think we had 6 sessions, Sharon, had at the end, gentlemen stand up and say, we need these voices in EM. This has been a long time coming. The perspectives in this room are changing the way we do things, and they're changing the way things will be for our daughters. And you're exactly right. The allies sort of abound. And we had a cocktail hour for women in EM, and I would say it was 50-50 men and women, because there are so many allies that are, mentors and or mentees of women. So it was just fantastic to begin those conversations, and you really are leading them in Ontario and have been for some time. So I want to ask you another sort of loaded question, which is if you could select something that you would like to see as a change in the field of emergency management, that, all of our listeners and all of our allies out there could hear, what do you think it would be if we could all make a change in our daily life as EM professionals to move this profession forward, whether that's a cultural shift or a shift in policies? What do you think we can do? Or what would you like to see for women in this field?
I mean, I have a wish list a mile long for EM, of course, but I think what I would really like to see is the culture shift to the whole of community approach. And we say it, but I don't see a lot of traction behind it. I don't see a lot of support for it. And I think we kind of, again, it's another one like mental health where we check the boxes. Yeah, we use a whole of community approach. But when I say that, I'm talking about the fact that you can't separate emergency management from everything else happening in the community. 100%. So the opioid crisis, mental health and addictions, the awful conditions in our First Nations communities, and the generational trauma. So my thing is, when bad things happen, the bulk of the people you're supporting are the people who have pre-existing vulnerabilities of some kind.
Yeah.
Because we all know there's three kind of areas of who we help in EM. There's the folks who don't need anything and they just want information. There's the ones who are okay for a few days and then they end up, in a precarious position. And then there's the ones who cannot pre-plan, have no capacity. I mean, people on ODSP can't have a 72-hour kit. It's ridiculous to think they can.
Right.
They can't make the day having food. And so that's, at a recent forum I was at, Patricia Martell said, your response gets made or broke, made or broken by how you deal with the vulnerable individuals. Mm-hmm. So when I talk whole of community, I'm talking about embedding EM planning and preparedness and mitigation, not just for fires, floods, critical infrastructure failures, but let's embed it in the community as a whole. Let's have these tables that are made up of, all of the agencies or support staff and services, and make it ongoing, not just because your emergency management program review came up and you want to tick some boxes that you talked to them. Right? But embed them in our programs. Now, part of the problem is, and especially in Northern Ontario, CMCs are double, triple, and quadruple hatted. So resourcing, the province can ask for anything they want in that new legislation, but unless it comes with resources and money for municipalities, it is going to be extremely difficult. And we're going to continue to not be as prepared as we could be. And we are going to continue to have tripping up on responses. It happens all the time. And I'm tired of, after almost 30 years, seeing the same mistakes being made. We're not learning anything. And so, they talk about a safe, better practice, prepared Ontario. But I'm not seeing it because we're not embracing getting rid of the silos. They're still there. So we need to work with all of those partners. We need to create standing committees, put money into it. Because guess what? It's like anything, even social work. When I was taught, many moons ago in school, for every investment we make in $1, we save $5 in the long run.
Yeah.
Right? We know this. So why don't we do it? And you know what? It's not because it's not, Laura, because we can't. It's because there is no willingness to do so. And there's no willingness because it disrupts the power structure. It disrupts the money structure. And all of that. So, and I have no problem calling that out. We know it exists, and it's time we actually say, no, we need to break those down. So there's, responsibilities at all levels, including the individual, but all levels of government, to say, we need to put resources and capacity in so that we can have a true whole of community approach, weave in mental health, weave in the social emergencies we're seeing in our communities, especially our Indigenous communities. And it's all works together. It needs to all work together. I see funding pots where they're funding an EM coordinator here, a social emergency coordinator here, a mitigation project that, you have to put in $1 million of your own money. Well, guess what? A municipality with 300 people doesn't have $1 million to put
That's
towards
correct.
mitigation.
Yes.
So, at all of the federal, provincial, and municipal levels, we're not doing the stuff we need to do. And we are patting ourselves on the back saying, hey, we did a great job. I'm great. You know what? There are really good people doing really great work. And at the end of the day, if we kept people safe and got them home and got them settled into a new life, that's wonderful. But you know what? It's hiding what's really happening and behind the damage that it's leaving. The other one, Laura, I will say, is recovery. We ignore recovery.
We do.
It's not
I always
sexy.
say it is, the emergency management continuum that nobody, worldwide, we don't get this right.
No.
No. And it's the thing that we can plan for. We can create, things that would work because we have years of experience doing this. And yet it's the failure every time, because once, the sexy part of the emergency is over, the lights and cameras and everything disappear and all the funding envelopes dry up and people walk away, and, the community is left holding that recovery bag. And it is, we see it time and time again. And it is, for me, one of the most disheartening things in our in our bucket. So tell me how, you're trying to shift those discussions.
So it goes back to the whole of community and the true whole of community. So if we want to do recovery well, then guess what? If we have these tables, teams, funding sources, things all sorted out ahead of time, we can go right into that weird gray area between response and recovery, which is usually what makes or breaks people, right? And that's where people fall through the gaps. I have been on multiple responses, including a very big flood in my city of Thunder Bay, I think 10 or so more years ago, where it was people falling through the cracks. Now, we created, and Red Cross facilitated it, but the city fully supported it, a task force to deal with that. But my thing was, why are we coming up with that on the fly? That task force should be a standing piece so that, guess what? It helps with prep. It helps with response, and it goes right into recovery. Seamless service delivery is my favorite 3 words.
Seamless service. Those are your favorite 3 words. Yeah.
Those are my favorite 3 words, because we don't do anything, whether it's social work or this, we don't do it seamlessly. It's choppy. And there's no reason for it to be choppy. We know what we need to do. Again, willingness and putting funding and capacity towards doing it is what needs to happen to make it seamless.
So I want to touch on a couple of things there. The first is that, in the last couple of years, you've taken a jump into consulting, and you have specifically created a program that brings all of this into a conversation that we really haven't had before. And you have this 4C model that I want to share with our listeners, because you talk about community, collaboration, caring, and capacity. And there's a couple of things in there that, as traditional EM folks, we know haven't been part of any model. And that is, the caring and community piece. We do lots of great things with, building collaboration with partners and capacity building. But there's a couple of words that are not there part in your 4C model of our traditional EM discussions, and they're not part of our traditional EM program. So talk to me about how you decided to start bringing some of these words into the forefront of our the forefront of our field. Thank you.
So, interestingly enough, when I was kind of trying to figure out what the model of my business would look like, I actually had some comments from people going, Sharon, you're being too social worky. That's not what EM is. And I'm like, well, maybe that's the problem.
That is the problem. Yes.
Right. Maybe. So I'm not kidding you, Laura. I was walking my dog, and walking is one of my major resources for mental health. I put the music on, the dog's prancing in front of me, and all of a sudden I don't even know where it came from. I said, 4 C's. Four C's. What are my four C's? It just came to me because I know about community, I know about collaboration, and I believe in building capacity. Um, and then I thought, oh, caring. We have to have caring. If I'm going to do something that's truly authentic to me, I have to have that in there. And I think because I let my brain kind of open up and stop thinking about what other people thought about it, it kind of just came to me. So I went home, I wrote down the model, I wrote down the what I thought each piece could look like. And I thought that's it. Like it was just really a light bulb moment. I can't tell you where it came from. I think the universe just provided it to me. And what was really great about it was when I did talk to people who are very like-minded like me, who are also, I know actually several people who are EM and social work-based people, and they were like, this is it, Sharon, this is it, this is you. And I hate to say I needed the confirmation from others, but in a weird way I did.
You do sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes you need that validation that like I'm not out to lunch, because I had been hearing, like I said, you need to focus on this, you need to focus on this. You're not doing this right, you're not doing this right. I'm like, but I need to be true to me. That's the stage I'm at in life. If I'm not authentic, I'm not enjoying it. And you can tell with me when I'm not authentic. It's not hard to tell nowadays. But yeah, and so the community piece, again, I had heard whole of community. I really dug in and read more about it and realized, oh, we're just checking boxes at the provincial and federal levels on this. We're not actually doing it. And again, some people want to do it and don't have the capacity. And then the caring was, okay, at the core, EM is about people. So if it's about people, then caring has to be part of the equation. Because if we don't care, and we know most of us care about people, but if I don't build something that has caring in it, which is more than just trauma informed and mental health, it's just that wellness component in general, and embedding it in, then I'm not doing myself justice to what I believe in. So yeah, it was a walk with the dog. I give all credit to my little Trixie dog here.
So that just reinforces taking time away from, your regular life and from your work, and getting outside can inspire, which is what you reminded me to do this morning.
Yeah.
So I also want to take a moment to touch on something that I know is super close to your heart. And that is, and you know that I spent a good deal of time in Northern Ontario as well. So I went to Lakehead University in Thunder Bay. Yes. So I have a big love for the North. And I spent, the first sort of decade of my career working all over Northeastern Ontario. So I want to talk a little bit about the Northwest Response Forum that you have recently led, and how that came to be, and what you're trying to do for the Northwest.
Oh, thank you. It's such a wonderful thing. So it started in 2009, and I wasn't involved at that time, but I was with Red Cross, so I would attend it and go to it. And it was built as a way for Northwest in particular, but open to everybody, of course, for people to get training and education and networking closer to home. Our folks cannot afford to go to the DEMCONs of the world.
Yep.
It's someone from Red Lake, it's a five days away, hotel, meals, everything, right?
Cost prohibitive.
It's cost prohibitive. And time, again, these are people who do EM off the side of their desks because that's the only capacity they have. We don't have one full-time CMC in Northwestern Ontario.
Which is crazy.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. So I got to see the forum, kind of know what it was, but it was always held in the city of Dryden, and part of it strategically was to keep it in a smaller, more rural area. It's a beautiful spot, beautiful training center there. And so I had the opportunity to join the committee, and all of a sudden became the chair. It was just one of those weird things that morphed. I chaired my first one, I think it was 2000, it was in the 2010s realm there. And I was
a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. And this is the third one this year that I've chaired. Absolutely wonderful team, made up of people who are some of the best EM professionals, I think, in this province, who are a mix of both people from Northern Ontario as well as, EMO, the federal government. But people just have a real passion for making it work. And what's always been amazing about it is that people actually, say, we love the feel of this. And we had one of our sponsors get up at dinner this time and say she's been part of the forum for a number of years with a number of organizations. And now they were sponsoring our dinner that we had for folks so they could network. And she said, this conference is different. It's built different. It feels different. This is why I keep coming back. And that's exactly, I couldn't say it any better than what she said it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that we can provide that to people. Yes, could we bring it to a larger venue in another city and make it bigger? We absolutely could. Strategically, we've chosen not to, because that's always been the vibe. Maybe the committee one day will, but we really love being in Dryden. We love the center there, does amazing work for us. But people, like a lot of our guests and stuff who came from different parts of Ontario and across Canada, all the way from BC, has said, this was great. We were inspired. We loved it. We want to tell people about it and come back. And we've brought speakers from all over North America over the years to this forum. So we only hold it every 2 years simply because it is a lot of work and we're doing it off the side of our desks. But in a way, it's more impactful that way, that it is every 2 years. There's time for new tools and resources and percolating of thoughts and experiences that happen. And we want to make sure that we always give it the time and attention that it requires to, because again, it's very important to us. It's a non-revenue generating event. We just seek to make sure we have enough money to run the next one. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful event. And I have just an amazing, amazing team.
Thank you for sharing that. And so I have been watching, it was quite recently, a couple of weeks ago, and I have been watching, all of the comments unfold on LinkedIn and seeing, just how much the EM community appreciated the forum, how much, I'm going to say caring and sharing was and collaboration was happening. I mean, really, your 4C model was put into a real life forum there. And, just to see even the amount of people that were engaged and talking about it after, I think is such a valuable thing. And for Northern Ontario, I absolutely agree with you. There has to be a place and space where the challenges that are different from the north to the south have space and have a forum, and those discussions can be fully supported. So thank you so much for putting, your heart and soul into that. You and I were just chatting earlier about me putting that in my calendar because, I would love to be a participant, to watch and learn from all of the experts up there with you. So thank you for adding that to your list of all of the things you do for the community. Now, Sharon, we have run out of time. And so what I want to do is tell our listeners, if you have not already reached out to Sharon on LinkedIn, please do. Her page is a wealth of information. Please reach out to her personally if you want to chat about her 4C model, if you want to chat about anything we've talked about on today's podcast, because Sharon, like many of the pioneers in EM across the continent, loves to hear from folks. And we are trying to create a space where women are comfortable talking about the challenges in EM. We are really trying to push forward the momentum of folks like Sharon in the field, and have those conversations and make space for the uncomfortable conversations and make space for each other in this field. So Sharon, I cannot thank you enough for all of your personal time, all of the work time, and basically the career you have dedicated to the communities that you serve. And thank you so much for spending time with Resilient Heroes this morning. And I can't wait to have you back. I think the next time you come back, we're going to talk about, an event or response that you were involved in that was particularly challenging or rewarding. We always like to have folks come back and join us. So Sharon, thank you so much. We loved having you today.
Well, I definitely have a few of those examples. Would love to chat. And Laura, thank you for what you're doing. I think this is such a valuable space, and I'm so honored that I got to be here with you.
Thank you so much. And Resilient Heroes, until next time. The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Buffalo Computer Graphics. All content is for informational purposes only. Are you or someone you know a resilient hero and would be interested in contributing to our podcast? We would love to hear from you. Please contact us at RHpodcast@buffalocomputergraphics.com.